Thank you everyone for listening to the story on the channel Good Stories Audio. Chapter 11, New to the Wind. Seeming to understand what she meant, Zhuo Fan hurriedly said, "There is no threat from Sun Guangjia and others now. I don't know what the young lady plans." "Oh, we originally planned to protect the young lady to go to Kaifu." Luo Yunsheng had not said yet, and Pang Tongling had already said. At this moment, his guardian commander no longer regarded Zhuo Fan as an ordinary domestic slave, but a senior Luo family who could sit on equal foot with him. "You should understand that Mr. Kai's son has a marriage contract with our young lady." "Oh, is it the Fenglin City Kai family?" Zhuo Fan touched his chin and nodded secretly. According to the kid's memory, this Kai family is the largest family in Fenglin City, which is comparable to the Luo family. If the Luo brother and sister could be handed over to them, then this kid should be able to die, and the demon in his heart should be lightened. Maybe it can be completely eliminated, then he is really free. Thinking of this, Zhuo Fan nodded again and again. "Well, go to the Kai family." Then he turned to look at the Black Wind Mountain and muttered, "I will be back." At the same time, in a dark cave on the top of Haifeng Mountain, a young man with a strange face was sitting in a big chair, looking at a small babble below, a sharp flash in his eyes from time to time. "Haven't believed it yet?" Zai, Zhao Shao Zhaizu, Sun Guangjia sent a letter and said, "The exercises will be available immediately." Xiao myself shivered, her head lowered deeply, and did not dare to stare at the young man. "Haha, go on." "Yes." Xiao myself wiped the sweat from her head and fled back, as if staying for a while, the person above would eat him. After the man left, the boy slowly stood up, came to a curtain behind him, and stretched his hand. I saw a gray-haired old man lying behind the curtain. He was looking at the man angrily, but his lips were trembling, but he could not speak. Seeing this, the young man chuckled and patted his dry palm and said softly, "Master, you can rest assured that your old friend has already waited for you there. I will send you the old one. When the dragon palm is back, the two are reunited." Hearing this, the old man opened his eyes sharply, his eyes full of blood and red, as if he wanted to eat people, but his whole body could not move, just shaking. Seeing this scene, the young people's rampant laughter sounded in the cave, arrogant and evil. Fenglin City is the largest city within 100 miles, and it is 10 days away from the Luo family. Fearing that the thieves of Haifeng Mountain would still be chased, Zhuo Fan and his team rushed all night and arrived in only 5 days. When we first entered the city, the noise and prosperity of the city let everyone's minds loose. It seemed that even the tense fears of the past days disappeared at this moment. Feeling the peaceful atmosphere of people walking on and off the street, Luo Yunsheng's tight cheeks have been smiling for the first time at this moment. "Yunhai, look there." Luo Yunsheng took his brother's hand and smiled at the juggling booth. Commander Pang saw that they had not been lost because of the destruction of the family. He grinned happily and turned to Zhuo Yifan, "Brother Zhuo Yifan, I remember you have never been in the wind before the city." Nodded slightly, Zhuo Fan's face remained indifferent. Seeing this, Pang Tong couldn't help but stunned. The prosperity of Fenglin City is well known far and near. I remember his first visit to Fenglin City, but I couldn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights in excitement. Why did this kid never leave the villa and came to such a prosperous capital, but he didn't feel anything at all? But where did he know that in Zhuo Fan's eyes at this time, the city was no different from a small mountain village? "Lao Pang, has the Kai family not yet arrived?" After a few days of hard work, Zhuo Fan and the Pang commander's relationship have also gotten closer, and the two have even begun to match each other. Commander Pang has not spoken yet. Luo Yunsheng on the side as preemptively said, "We can't go directly to the Kai family. Yunhai and I should go to the house to meet first, and then come to pick you up. You can go to the inn in front to settle down." So troublesome. Zhuo Fan frowned. With a bitter smile, Commander Pang shrugged helplessly, "There is no way. Who made us come to the Kai family? If you come directly to the door, it will make people laugh, and we have no courtesy." "Okay, you go first." Zhuo Fan took a deep breath and nodded in agreement. Anyway, as long as the sisters and brothers are settled, he should be free, and it's no big deal to wait a little longer. However, at this time, the noise of the crampet, which had not appeared in 5 days, rang through his ears again. "Ha, dog minion, this wind is coming to the city, but my brother-in-law's territory. You wait, see how I clean up you." Luo Yunhai put his hands on his hips, his nostrils up to the sky, and once again restored to that incomparable young master. Bump. But when the words just fell, Zhuo Fan didn't hesitate to put a foot on Luo Yunhai's butt, and immediately kicked him a meter away, and fell into a dog-biting mud. "Don't wait for your brother-in-law to come, I will clean up for you now." Upon seeing this, Luo Yunsheng hurriedly lifted up his younger brother. He turned back and stared at Zhuo Fan fiercely. "Why are you always seeing children like this? Your brother owes it." Zhuo Fan glanced at her lightly and waved her hand. "Hurry up and wait for you to settle down. If you still look at me and don't look good, just drive me away." Luo Yunsheng snorted, picked up his brother, and left. Luo Yunhai was lying on his sister's shoulders, his small face flushed red, and he didn't dare to say anything. At a young age, he couldn't figure it out. In the woods, their sisters and brothers were helpless. But when it came to the wind in the city, his brother-in-law's side, but he was supported by someone. Why should he be beaten by this dog slave? Isn't this dog servant scared of heaven and earth? He was at Luo's house, but he had never seen such a person. Commander Pang witnessed the whole process aside, but he was already stunned, and his eyes were about to fall out. He would never have thought of when Zhuo Fan became so bullish. He dared to beat the young master in front of the young lady, and the young lady just complained and did not pursue it. You know, the young master is the heart of the young lady, and she is not willing to say anything heavier than usual. But now, Zhuo Fan even kicked the young master without care, and he was so skilled. Now he realized that, why the young master saw Zhuo Fan with the cat, and saw the cat like a cat, so he didn't dare to say anything. It turned out that he was scared. Wiping the cold sweat on his head, Pang commanded Zhuo Fan and said, "Brother Zhuo Fan, after all, the young master is the master. If you don't look at the monk's face to see the Buddha's face, not the lady's face, but also to see the face of his brother-in-law, how can you kick him?" With a laugh, Zhuo Fan shrugged indifferently. He never regarded anyone as the master. Everything he did was to eliminate the demons. Chapter 12. Bizarre Girl. "Anyway, they won't be able to come back in a while, we will go shopping elsewhere." Zhuo Fan turned and walked, and Commander Pang knew that he had not listened to his words, but he sighed helplessly and followed. Soon, the two came to a square city. Here are some places where loose repairs are carried out, and things are exchanged for things or spiritual stones for cultivation. With the experience of his previous life, here may be able to find some good things buried. The two of them looked left and right on the way. Pang Commander saw his eyes shining brightly. He wanted to reach out several times, but when he saw Zhuo Fan walking forward dull, he could only keep up. Perhaps he didn't even realize that his dignified guardian commander knew when he was used to walking behind Zhuo Fan's ass. Alas, there are so many undetected good things in the world waiting for you to get out. Forget it, let's go. Zhuo Fan turned the whole city around, and there was still nothing in his eyes that shook his head helplessly. However, before he left, a loud noise came into his ears. Looking around, I saw a street vendor arguing with a young girl with a blushing neck. Just to see the excitement, Zhuo Fan led Pang Tong to crowd the crowd and came to the two. Only then did he see clearly the appearance of the girl. The girl was dressed in plain clothes, and her eyebrows looked like ewer. She looked quite quiet. Even though the other party had screamed, she still had a faint smile on her face and didn't look angry, but she still insisted on her own opinions. Your black jade is not true. Which eye do you see that it is not true? This is the purest black jade. Even if it is exposed to the sun for a day, it is still as cold as water. Made of jade ware for a long time, it will be more effective in practice. The man was spitting stars and talking about how pure his ink jade was. Miss, do you know how to do it? The girl shook her head, but still smiled at the corner of her mouth. I don't understand Moyu, but I have seen real Moyu once, knowing that you are a fake. Haha, don't you dare to say that you can tell whether Moyu is true or false. Everyone, listen, is there such a ridiculous thing in the world? Yes, I have this ability. If it is an estimate, the 10 most Moyu jade spirit stones, the best Moyu jade spirit stones, you are only worth 3. Go for it, you little nizzy, talk nonsense, don't disturb Laozi's business. Why do you set Moyu's price? The girl smiled and said nothing, but she still looked at the man with her eyes, and looked at the man with fire in her heart, but she couldn't vent her breath. As the saying goes, people reach out without making faces. The girl has always denied the value of his ink jade for no reason. If it were ordinary people, he would have slapped it. But looking at the girl's smile, he still couldn't lift his hand. Your piece of black jade is indeed fake. Suddenly, a male voice sounded from behind, and everyone looked, and Zhuo Fan looked at the girl with a smile on his face and said, Miss has a unique vision, but how can you convince people if they can't wear fakes? Also fake. The girl looked at Zhuo Fan deeply for a moment, then nodded thoughtfully. With a slight smile, Zhuo Fan looked around and said, will you help me prepare something? Sulfur, alfalfa. Zhuo Fan said that these are the most common things in Fangxi, and soon some people who look at the bustling and not too big are ready. In front of everyone, Zhuo Fan put these things in clean water, stirred it, and then looked at the merchant. Please put that black jade in this water. Let go. The vendor seemed quite confident and slowly put the Moyu in. However, as soon as Moyu entered the water, the blisters appeared in a rhythmic manner, and then the whole water gradually turned red, even exuding a smell. How could this be? The trader was shocked and couldn't help saying. The girl also blinked Wenjing's big eyes and looked at it all in amazement. Haha, don't be surprised, because this piece of Moyu was originally imitation, so it faded as soon as the potion was put in. Zhuo Fan took the Moyu and returned it to the merchant. Now, you should know the girl was right. I was deceived by those bastards, but I also spent 20 spirit stones to buy it. The merchant gritted his teeth. Your black jade is only worth 3. After the girl started her valuation again, she turned to Zhuo Fan and said with a smile, Mr. is really good looking. The little girl only knows that it is fake, but she doesn't know how to distinguish it. Fortunately, he helped. Where? I've only been in this kind of once. Zhuo Fan leaned back and smiled. Miss, don't you buy it, although it's only worth 3 yuan. No, I just want to tell the man his worth of Moyu. The girl smiled and turned away from Fangxi. Watching the girl's back fade away, Commander Pang came to Zhuo Fan and sighed, it's a strange woman. After a long sigh of relief, Zhuo Fan murmured with relief. This woman has a venomous eye. Fortunately, she has no experience, otherwise, she will be the first to take the treasure away. With that said, Zhuo Fan turned to look at the piece of black jade again, his eyes flashing with excitement. But the vendor boss has started to pack up and sigh, ready to go home. Chapter 13, Blood Elf. I didn't expect Lao Tzu to blink. On the dark path, the merchant was carrying baggage and walking forward with his head down in frustration. There was no noise around him, only he couldn't stop lamenting. Suddenly, a loud voice rang behind him, "Boss, please stay." Unexpectedly, the merchant stopped his body and turned his head to look, only to see Zhuo Fan quickly ran to him. "You are." Just now, the merchant remembered Zhuo Fan because of him. All the people in Fangxi knew that his piece of black jade was fake. "What's the matter with you?" "Haha, boss, I want your piece of jade, and I have 10 spirit stones." Zhuo Fan smiled at the merchant, his eyes glancing at the burden behind him from time to time. After pondering for a while, the vendor looked at Zhuo Fan strangely. "Sir, you know that my piece of black jade is fake. Why are you willing to produce 10 spirit stones?" The lady just said, "My stone is only worth 3 pieces." With a smile and shaking his head, Zhuo Fan said lightly, "Even if the moyu is fake, it can be a little bit spurious. In my hands, I might be able to sell a good moyu price." "Oh, I see, you want to resell it to people who don't know the goods." The merchant nodded suddenly, his eyes turned around. "In this case, you are doing big business, there are too few spirit stones." "Right. So how much do you want?" Zhuo Fan's eyes narrowed, and the killing flickered. "At least 50 yuan." The merchant waved his hand, revealing a treacherous look. "Otherwise, I will find someone who doesn't know how to do it, at least 100. After reminding Zhuo Fan, the merchants thought that after all, Mo Yu knew only a few in the world, and only the 2 of them saw the truth of this thing in the whole city. He can earn more by taking fake seriously. "Whether you buy it or I will go find a buyer myself." The merchant saw Zhuo Fan kept silent, knowing that he couldn't get so many spirit stones. But that's fine. He happened to be able to shoot in person, so as not to cheapen others, so he lifted his legs and left. And many more. Suddenly, just when the merchant took a step, palm-like pliers grabbed his shoulder fiercely, holding him straight out and yelling, "Boss, the business can't be too greedy," Zhuo Fan said coldly. "Well, what's the matter? Mo Yu is Lao Tzu. How much Lao Tzu loves to sell," the merchant had to rebut, but without saying a word, a black elementary force suddenly entered his body, making him unable to make any noise. Then, his body slowly turned black, and finally, under a breeze, it turned into a piece of powder and dissipated in the air. With a long sigh of breath, Zhuo Fan felt the strength of his body, and only a little bit of growth. He is now a master of concentration. Like the skills of this small merchant building on the 7th floor, it is already difficult to bring him a substantial improvement. Moreover, Zhuo Fan didn't want to turn this kid away, but unfortunately, he refused to do business with himself. Then Zhuo Fan had to rob it. Finding the piece of black jade from the baggage of the merchant, Zhuo Fan turned to walk towards the inn. He is not a bloodthirsty person, but someone has to die. Back at the inn, I just met the leader Pang, who was waiting for him to come back. Zhuo Fan threw him a cloth bag. "Old Pang, give it back to you." Commander Pang took it, opened it, and wondered, "Hey, 10 spirit stones are here. Haven't you bought it?" Previously Zhuo Fan let Pang Tong lead back to the inn to wait for him, and borrowed 10 spirit stones from him, saying that it was a fancy thing. But now, 10 spirit stones are still motionless in this bag. "Oh, That boss is good, give it to me. Zhuo Fan sneered. Also, Lao Pang, you are guarding my door, no one can enter. With that said, Zhuo Fan entered his room and closed the door. Commander Pang was strange, but he was naturally asked to help by his brother. So he didn't go back to his room anymore, and then he sat on the floor outside Zhuo Fan's door, guarding the door. Zhuo Fan knew everything outside the door and nodded secretly. It is lucky to be able to meet such a person who is loyal. Then, Zhuo Fan put the black jade on the table, and the black elemental force in his hand rushed forward. Bump! With a loud noise, cracks appeared in the jade-like emerald coat, and then fell layer by layer, revealing the blood-red light inside. At this time, it was no longer black jade, but instead turned into red blood jade. And this blood jade seems to be a heart, with the red light flashing, it is also doing a regular beating. I was right, blood elf. Zhuo Fan swallowed hard, and there was little excitement on his face that could hardly be suppressed. Blood elves, generally born in strange stone minerals, are irrigated by thousands of people with fine blood, sucking the spirit of the world, the essence of the sun and the moon, and can be formed after 10 million years. To yin to yang is the treasure of the demon cultivator, rare in the world. Normal cultivators repair blood elves to death blood babies. When the blood babies come out in the face of enemies, they can kill people with blood and die, which is extremely cruel. And blood babies can grow up together with cultivators, especially saint-level blood babies. Even the emperor-level strong men dare not provoke them at will. According to the records of the Nine Secrets, there was a devil master in ancient times who was a blood demon ancestor. The blood infant had already reached the holy level, and even the 10 ancient emperors were not willing to be easily enemies. Finally, the blood demon ancestor, consciously invincible in the world, find a 9 ghost demon emperor, want to fight for the supreme position of the devil. 9 demon emperor killed the blood demon ancestor by one stroke, but he was also seriously injured. However, the secret method of the blood demon ancestors practicing blood infants was obtained by the 9 devil emperor, improved, and added to the heavenly demon Dahua recipe. At that time, the 9 nether devil emperor also wanted to cultivate blood babies, but it was a pity that he never found it. I never thought that he would have such good luck after he was reborn, and he would get the chance to practice the natal blood infant. If he had a natal blood infant in the previous life, even the Holy One, he would not be in the eye. Thinking of this, Zhuo Fan can't wait to open his wrist and drop blood drop by drop on the blood jade. Chapter 14. Sacrifice blood refining. Guru, just like a baby sucking, every drop of blood fell on the jade stone and disappeared in a blink of an eye, and the jade stone beats more and more. Zhuo Fan looked at all this, and a strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and Yun Gong continued to force more blood to be poured on this blood jade. If you want to refine a blood baby, you must first pour it with the blood of the cultivator until you are in the same voice with the blood elf and feel its heart. Time passed by 1 minute and 1 second, the blood on Zhuo Fan's body was getting more and more, but the blood elf was like a hungry wolf who could never eat enough, and never stopped absorbing it. Zhuo Fan licked some dry lips, his face gradually became pale, and things began to trance in front of him. He understood that this was caused by excessive blood loss, but he couldn't give up. Whether he can conquer the blood elves and become a blood baby is only this time. If you stop supplying blood, it will be like a child who has been abandoned, thinking that you gave it up and will never be united with your heart again. So once started, Zhuo Fan can only continue. Half an hour later, Zhuo Fan felt that the whole world was turning. He understood that if he continued to bleed blood, he might endanger his life. If life is gone, there is no point in asking the blood elves. However, just when he hesitated whether to give up, suddenly, an inexplicable rhythm appeared in his mind. Zhuo Fan was shocked, and there was a joy in his heart, and he and the spirit of the blood elf finally communicated. So he hurriedly took the bloodstone in his hand and ran the Dafa Dahua recipe. Suddenly, the gurgling black elemental force coiled around the bloodstone, and the bloodshot eyes also oozed out of the bloodstone, slowly flowing into Zhuo Fan's body. Finally, with a loud noise, the bloodstone suddenly burst, and a red light burst out from inside and entered Zhuo Fan's body. Zhuo Fan watched and saw a palm-sized red baby lying quietly in his danshan. It seemed to feel Zhuo Fan's consciousness inspection. After the baby opened his eyes, he fell asleep quietly. "This is natal blood baby." Zhuo Fan couldn't help but startled, and then jumped up happily. He never imagined that he could become a natal blood infant so easily. However, although he succeeded, he lost too much blood after all. Just stood up and fell softly, and fell to the ground involuntarily, but there was still an excited smile on his face. Now that there is a natal blood infant, the martial art to be practiced next is decided. Blood Shadow Palm, all intermediate level martial arts, struck out with one palm, will make the enemy's blood vigorous, the veins and veins will be chaotic, and there is no power to parry. Coupled with the help of blood infants, the blood and blood of the middle palm are all damaged, extremely insidious, and vicious. Although it belongs to the ordinary intermediate martial arts, its power is more than ordinary martial arts, but it is more than that 10 days later. With a squeak, the door opened, and Zhuo Fan walked out of the room, glowing with red light. Pang Tong, who had been sitting at the door, stood up for him immediately, rubbed his eyes, and came to him. "Why are you coming out now? Kai Fu has already been rushed over there." Looking at Lao Pang, who hadn't closed his eyes for 10 days, Zhuo Fan smiled and said, "Lao Pang, you have worked hard." "Hey, what's so hard for the brothers, but they can't let the young masters wait too fast." "Why, don't you wonder what I'm doing in these 10 days? That's your business. If you want to sue me, you will naturally say it." Commander Pang waved his hand indifferently, and then immediately pulled Zhuo Fan to Kai Fu. Looking at the rude man's every move, Zhuo Fan couldn't help moving. Although Lao Pang didn't get along with him for a long time, he gave him unconditional trust. This was never encountered when he practiced all the way to Devil Emperor realm in his previous life. Half an hour later, Pang Tong led Zhuo Fan to a magnificent mansion door, and the plaque on it was written with 2 golden characters, Kai Mansion. However, just as the two were about to enter the house, the 2 guards stopped them. "Stop, who are you, dare to break into Kai Fu?" Pang Tongling clenched his fists and smiled and said, "Hehe, the next is Gyunzuang Luojia Guardian Commander Pang Yu. This is Luojia's housekeeper Zhuo Fan. My young master is a guest in Gizhu." Hearing this, Zhuo Fan couldn't help but stunned and looked strangely at Commander Pang. When did he become Luojia's butler? It seemed to understand what he was thinking. Pang Yu secretly said in his ear, 8 days ago, the Kai family came to say that you are the Luojia housekeeper. It is estimated that the lady introduced it. Congratulations, brother Zhuo." Hehe, shaking his head helplessly, Zhuo Fan couldn't help laughing. He didn't want to be a Luojia butler, he just wanted to entrust the sisters and brothers to the Kai family in peace, and left after removing the demon. How could he be a steward for a small family with a magnificent emperor? However, he did not look down on the Luo family, and the guards of the Kai house also seemed to look down on the Luo family. Glancing at the two with a squint, the 2 guards all showed contempt. "Humph, there are 2 more cheaters." "Hey, what are you talking about?" Commander Pang was furious and wanted to go forward to the theory, but was pulled by Zhuo Fan and walked straight into Kaifu. Leader Pang looked at Zhuo Fan puzzled. "What are you doing with me?" Zhuo Fan said nothing, but his face was serious. People's attitudes are often related to their masters. What can you say to them? What they have to do now is to immediately find Luo Yunsheng and figure out the situation. Perhaps Kaifu is no longer his entrusted place. Soon, after inquiring about Kaifu's servants, Zhuo Fan and his two came to the residence of Luo Yunsheng's sisters and brothers. Looking at the devastating place, where even their inn was inferior, Commander Pang couldn't help but anger and yell, "How can the Kai family treat Miss Young Master like this? There is not even a minimum of hospitality. It's not just that, I just treated them as the people." Zhuo Fan also felt a little angry in his heart, not because he was upset about the sisters and brothers, but wasted his thoughts in vain. "Go inside and see." Zhuo Fan entered the house with a sullen face, and Commander Pang hurriedly followed. But when they entered the house, they only saw Luo Yunhai sitting lonely beside the bed, his eyes dull, and there was no longer the liveliness and arrogance of the past. The scene in the house is also very simple, with only a broken table and broken stool. Seeing the scene, Commander Pang burst into tears among the tiger eyes. "Master, don't be sad, boy. What about your sister?" Zhuo Fan asked directly without being so sympathetic. It seemed that Zhuo Fan had beaten them a few times, leaving a shadow in his heart. Luo Yunhai, who was originally dull, heard his voice, but actually shivered, and came awake. Looking at Zhuo Fan, who exhaled anger, Luo Yunhai's Zhiwu said, "Sister, he went to find his sister, Kai Gongzi, begged him to help rebuild Gyunzuang. It's all this attitude. I'm just asking for humiliation. Go, take me to your sister." Zhuo Fan pulled Luo Yunhai out of bed with a hateful attitude. Commander Pang was in a hurry and wanted to stop Zhuo Fan's reckless behavior. How could anyone treat the master like this? However, Zhuo Fan seemed to have a deterrent innate, and when he was angry, Commander Pang did not dare to touch his brow with the slightest courage. As a result, Luo Yun led the way with fear and trembling in the front. Zhuo Fan was escorted behind, and the scene in the woods appeared again. Commander Pang followed them closely, looking a little trance. Who is the master? Chapter 15. Regret Marriage. By a green stream, a handsome young man is playing with a pretty woman in a red dress. The two chased each other, laughter resounding across the secluded lake. Luo Yunsheng looked at the two people's flirtatious posture, and his heart was tragic. But in order to revitalize the family, he walked up daringly. Brother Xiao Ting, his face gradually darkened, and the handsome young man glanced coldly at Luo Yunsheng and said, "Luo Yunsheng, I have made it clear to you. From now on, I have nothing to do with you, my eyes only sister Yu Fei. Yeah, if you're aware of the current situation, you'll hurry up. Xiao Ting has long disliked you." The woman in red raised her eyelids and looked at her with a sneer. Biting his lips fiercely, Luo Yunsheng's eyes were fogged. He still vaguely remembers that when Luo Kai and the two had a good relationship, the parents of both parties made a baby kiss for them. She grew up with Tsai Xiao Ting, and she is a sweet boy and a horse, and the two will swear together, and will never give up for life. Therefore, when the Luo family was in trouble, the first thing she thought of was to join her fiancé. However, what people did not expect was that she brought her younger brother to the Kai family, but she was repeatedly rejected. Moreover, Kai Xiaoting is surrounded by an arrogant Miss Sun family, Sun Yu Fei. Since then, she has understood that it is no longer possible for her to marry the Kai family. But in order to revitalize the family, she still hopes that the Kai family can help the Luo family help in the past. However, who once thought that Kai Rong, the head of the Kai family, was extremely indifferent to it and did not intend to do anything at all. He and his brother stayed with the Kai family for 10 days just to get help from the Kai family. Seeing Kai Rong ignored it, she had to come to Kai Xiaoting for help. "Brother Xiaoting, I don't want you to fulfill the wedding contract that year. I just hope you can persuade your uncle to help the Luo family with the good things they have done in the past. This matter has nothing to do with me. You tell my dad." Kai Xiaoting waved his sleeve and said coldly. Puff. Luo Yunsheng knelt down, and 2 lines of tears could not stop flowing down. "Brother Xiaoting, if you don't agree, Yun Chang kneels to death here today." After taking a deep look at her, Kai Xiaoting frowned, his face hesitant. However, at this moment, with a crackling sound, Sun Yufei was already standing between the two, slapping Luo Yunsheng's delicate face with a slap, and the powerful impact made her fall back, a trace of blood hang clearly on her mouth. "Ha, woman, Kai Xiaoting is my man, you will stay away from him in the future." Sun Yufei's eyes roared with impassion, then turned to look at Kai Xiaoting, and shouted. "If you stay away from this woman in the future, I will never let you go if I find out what you have to do with her." With a clever body, Kai Xiaoting nodded quickly, swearing, "Yufei, you can rest assured, I only have you in my heart, other women are just dung in my eyes." Kai Xiaoting's eyes exuded a sincere light, and looked at Sun Yufei like a pug. Sun Yufei nodded with satisfaction, but Luo Yunsheng was in front of him. She understood that the only hope in her heart had completely disappeared. Ah! Suddenly, a shadow flashed, followed by 2 loud slaps. Sun Yufei and Kai Xiaoting have not yet figured out what happened, and 2 bright red slap prints have been printed on their faces. Zhuo Fan stood in front of Luo Yunsheng, staring dully at the 2 of them. A pair of adulterers and adulterers, dare to spoil the big man. "Who are you?" Sun Yufei and Kai Xiaoting looked at the person in front of them, and they were shocked. They are all genius children in the wind in the city. They are masters above the atmosphere, and no one in their peers can match it. But Zhuo Fan looked similar to their age, but the shooting speed was amazingly fast. They even had no time to react, so he slaps. When did such a figure appear in this realm? At this time, Commander Pang and Luo Yunhai also caught up from behind and lifted Luo Yunsheng on the ground. Looking at the thin figure in front, Pang Tongling was more surprised than the 2. Although he is a master of Kiki realm, and Kai Xiaoting is a Kiki triple realm, he is an inferior after all. How can the practice of martial arts be compared with the children of the family? Therefore, if a real hands-on contest, he may not be able to win Kai Xiaoting. However, it is such a family child, but Zhuo Fan slaps easily, without the power to dodge. Thinking of Zhuo Fan's previous strength in the woods, Pang Tong could hardly imagine how he became so powerful in such a short time. Ignoring the questioning of the 2, and the surprised look of Pang Commander, Zhuo Fan glanced back at the pear blossoms with rain, and the pitiful Luo Yunsheng would have a trace of pain in his heart for no reason. Damn the demon! Zhuo Fan gritted his teeth. He knew in his heart that with the spirit of his Devil Emperor realm, he had already seen through all the sufferings in the world. How could he be heartbroken for the humiliation of a little girl? That can only be attributed to the former owner of this body, who is sad and angry at his master. Alas, it seems that I will have a long time to struggle with this Luo family. With a helpless eye in his heart, Zhuo Fan reached out to wipe away the tears for Luo Yunsheng, and said lightly, "Let's go." Looking up at Zhuo Fan, Luo Yunsheng nodded slightly. In this case, they had nothing to do with the Kai family. So she picked up Luo Yunhai with a bitter face and walked out with the help of Pang Commander. Humph, I want to leave after hitting someone, it's not that cheap. Suddenly, Sun Yufei scorned them and stopped their way. Kai shouting quickly hurriedly said, Luo Yunshang, where do you want to be? Come and go whenever you want. Luo Yunshang saw this, full of grief and indignation, his fists tightened unconsciously. She really regrets it now, and regrets why she wanted to join the Kai family. Faced with the aggressiveness of the two, but also in other people's territories, she only felt that she couldn't vent her anger. If she was alone, she would rather burn all the jade and protect her dignity, but there was a younger brother beside her. If he had an accident, she would never see her parents under Jiaquin anyway. What are you going to do? Luo Yunchang shivered. It's very simple. All of you kneel down and give us 3 bangs, then you can leave, otherwise. Sun Yufei smiled and pointed his fingers, especially him. After biting his teeth fiercely, Commander Pang had red eyes, and he wished to rush up to fight these two desperately, which was too bullying. Luo Yunshang hesitated for a moment, slowly closed his eyes, and bent his knees slowly down. Kneel down. Everyone could hear that Luo Yunshang's voice was already crying. Sun Yufei raised his head proudly, showing a smug smile. Bump. However, Luo Yunshang and others have not knelt down, and with a wailing, both Sun Yufei and Kai Xiaoting were the first to kneel to the ground. However, rather than kneeling, it was better to fall to the ground with your knees.